Hi, my name is Angela and I'm the youth leader here at Sacramento First Church of the Nazarene. Today's lesson is called Actions Speak Louder Than Words. So it's easy to talk a big game. We can go to church and we can brag about being Christians. We can even study the Bible for hours on end. However, that all means nothing if we are not living out our life and genuinely loving others. In the passage we're going to read, Jesus encounters some hypocritical Pharisees who question his authority, though they do not practice what they preach. Matthew 21:23 through 32 tells us the following story. When Jesus entered the temple, the chief priests and elders of the people came to him as he was teaching, and they said, "What kind of authority do you have for doing these things? Who gave you this authority?" Jesus replied, "I have a question for you, and if you tell me the answer, I'll tell you what kind of authority I have to do these things. Where did John get his authority to baptize? Did he get it from heaven or from humans?" They argued amongst themselves, and they said, "Well, if we say from heaven, he'll say to us, 'Then why didn't you believe him?' But we can't say from humans because we're afraid of the crowd, since everyone thinks John was a prophet." Then they replied, "We don't know." Jesus also said to them, "Neither will I tell you what kind of authority I have to do these things." This next section is called the parable of two sons. What do you think? A man had two sons. Now he came to the first and said, "Son, go and work in the vineyard today." "No, I don't want to," the son replied. But later he changed his mind and he went. The father said the same thing to the other son, who replied, "Yes, sir," but he didn't actually go. So which one of these two did his father's will? And they said, "The first one." Jesus said to them, "I assure you that tax collectors and prostitutes are entering God's kingdom ahead of you. For John came to you on the righteous road and you didn't believe him. But tax collectors and prostitutes, they did believe him. Yet even after you saw this, you didn't change your hearts and your lives, and you did not believe him." So some might interpret this parable with an emphasis on the way we act, claiming that we must do enough to justify or to demonstrate our faith. We know, however, that God's love does not depend on what we do, but on what Christ did. His death and his resurrection was the ultimate sacrifice or act of obedience. He proclaimed his authority by following through with his promises, unlike either son in the story. The gospel reminds us that our faith relies on his work. So what if I told you that I learned a new language? What if I told you I was taking lessons and now I know how to speak Japanese? Would you believe me? What if I said that I had been reading all about Japanese culture and I learned how to cook only Japanese foods, and from now on I'm only going to talk to people in Japanese? Well, sometimes it isn't just enough to talk about things. We actually have to do them, right? You might believe me when I say that I'm now fluent in Japanese because you know me and you know that I'm not a liar, but it would probably be a little more believable if you actually heard me speak in Japanese, right? I could walk around all day talking about how I know Japanese, but if you never heard me say a word in Japanese, you might start to wonder if I was telling the truth, right? Did you know that in some ways faith can be like that? We want to do more than just talk about our love for God and for other people. We should be living it too. Jesus discussed this a lot. In today's gospel, the Pharisees, those guys who thought they had all the things all together and always wanted to worry about rules, approached Jesus and asked him how he acted with such authority. They were trying to trick him and trap him. But Jesus gave a parable, or a short story, to demonstrate that the Pharisees were doing a lot of talking, but not a lot of doing. He said that a man had two sons, and he asked them both to work for him. One man said he would and didn't do anything. The other refused, but later went and did the work. Obviously, the son who really worked was the obedient one. Jesus was making a point that the Pharisees were caught up in saying they did the right thing, but they were missing the bigger picture. They were missing Jesus. He said that the sinners would be the ones to learn the truth. You see, we need to keep our eyes open for ways that we can truly love and obey, and not just talk about it. And there's an even greater truth being demonstrated in this parable or this story. Jesus did have a power and authority. It came from God himself. He wanted everyone to know that he was the obedient son. Jesus did what he said he would do. He came to rescue us from sin, and he fulfilled God's promises. We can take joy in knowing that he will always do what he says, and because of that, we have mercy and grace that comes from God. We want to pass that along by truly living out our love and serving others. We want to make sure that others know that we are Christians by the way we live our lives and how we act, talk, and love others. Take some time this week to examine how you're living your life. And if your actions are not matching your words, take some time to pray about that and ask God to help you, and he will.